Lesson 6 has us looking at the 4-quadrant coordinate plane. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to label the components of the coordinate plane below. So you have most likely worked with a coordinate plane already. You've probably worked with this section right here. And if you recall, you probably started right here. It asked you to move over some amount and then up some amount. You would put a dot and label it as a point. Well, we're going to do the same exact thing, except now you have previously used positive numbers only. We're going to start including negative numbers. So the first thing to look at this as is two number lines, a horizontal number line, which is called the x-axis, and a vertical number line, which we call the y-axis. These two number lines meet at the number 0. So this point right here would be 0 on the horizontal. It would also be 0 on the vertical number line. We call this point where they meet the origin. Okay, so that's the origin. Where the two number lines meet is your origin. So now we need to number our number lines. So if this is a horizontal number line and this dot is 0, directly to the right of 0 on this line is going to be positive 1. Next to that would be positive 2, positive 3, positive 4, 5, and so on. Notice I'm drawing this little line here. I find that to be very helpful in locating exactly where that number is. If this dot is 0, to the right of it is positive 1, which means to the left of it, or the line directly to the left, is going to be negative 1. Then negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. I know it's hard to read because this is very small. Negative 5, negative 6, negative 7, and so on. Okay, so that is our x-axis, or our horizontal number line. If we're doing the same thing for our vertical number line, or our y-axis, if this is 0, above the 0 are our positive numbers, and below 0 are our negatives. So directly above would be positive 1, 2, 3, and so on. Once again, notice I'm drawing that line to show exactly where the number hits on the line. And then below 0, the line directly below would be negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, and so on. I know it's very small. Okay, so then we have everything ordered. So now the next piece is actually how do we put points on this coordinate plane? Well, we use something called an ordered pair. And an ordered pair is very specific in the way it's written. It has a parenthesis, then a number representing the x-coordinate, a comma to separate, the number representing the y-coordinate, and we end our parentheses. So our x-coordinate is just the number that we're going to go to on the x-axis, and the y-coordinate is the number we're going to go to on the y-axis. Notice x comes first, so that means we're going to go over first, and then y comes next, so we're going to go up or down. I always think of it as we have to walk over to the elevator before we can get in it and go up or down. If we're looking at ordered pairs, the origin's ordered pair is 0 on the x-axis and 0 on the y-axis, so it's 0, 0. These two number lines have split this grid into 4 sections. These 4 sections are called quadrants, quad for 4. The quadrant that we start learning is quadrant 1. And we always write our quadrant numbers as Roman numerals. So 1 in Roman numerals is a capital I. If I want to put a point in quadrant 1, I always start at the origin, if I want something over in this area, I would need to move right into the x's, so that's positive numbers, and then up into the positive numbers. So any point in quadrant 1 is a positive number followed by a positive number. Let's look at an example. So if I start at 0, I move to the right to positive 6, and then up 3, that would be the point 6, 3. I went over to 6 for my x coordinate, up to 3 for my y coordinate. Quadrants move counterclockwise, so quadrant 1 is here, quadrant 2 is here. Roman numeral 2 is 2 capital I's. If I want a point in quadrant 2, starting at the origin, I would move to the left, which is into the negative numbers, and then up into the positive numbers. So this is always a negative number followed by a positive. So for example, let's do negative 7, so over to negative 7, up to positive 1. So that would be negative 7, 1. Quadrant 3 is located down here. 3 capital I's for Roman numeral 3. To get into this quadrant, starting at the origin, I would move left into the negatives and down into the negatives. So it's a negative followed by a negative. So let's do negative 5, negative 2, which would be right there. So negative 5, negative 2 is in quadrant 3. And then finally, we have quadrant 4. 4 is actually written a little differently. It's IV. V represents the number 5. And this is just saying 1 before 5, which is the same thing as 4. In quadrant 4, to get there, the origin's here. We'd move right into the positives and down into the negatives. So this is going to be a positive followed by a negative. So for example, if we do over to 8, down to negative 6, that's 8, negative 6. It's always over and then up or down. The wording on here just basically explains what I've already said, so we're going to skip over reading that and look at some examples. So here are some examples. This number line again is not numbered, so you may want to start with numbering your number lines anytime that they're not already labeled for you. I blew mine up to make it so it's nice and, well, not nice and large, but bigger than before. I'm not putting my lines on just to kind of speed things up here, but I know that each number represents the line, not the space. Okay, so if I'm going to plot points, I would start with my x and then my y coordinate. So it means I'm going to go over first and then up or down, depending if it's positive or negative. So point A is 3, 4. I always start at the origin. I'm going to go over to 3 and up to 4. Put a dot and label it A. This is in quadrant 1. Point B is negative 2, 6. Starting at the origin, I move over to negative 2, up to positive 6. This is point B. Point B is in quadrant 2. Negative 5, negative 2. Starting at the origin, move over to negative 5, down to negative 2. That's point C, and it's in quadrant 3. Point D is 4, negative 3. Starting at the origin, I move over to positive 4, down to negative 3, and that's in quadrant 4. Now the next two are a little different. They involve a 0. Anytime your ordered pair includes a 0, that means it's going to be on one of the axes. So don't forget we have our x and our y, which I should have labeled before. Point E is 0, 5. So what that means is I'm going to start at my origin, I'm not moving over any, and I'm going up to positive 5. So that means that E is on the y-axis. So if your x coordinate is 0, it's on the y-axis. Point F is 3, 0. So starting at the origin, I would move over to positive 3, and I wouldn't move up or down any. So that means point F is on the x-axis. So if your y coordinate is 0, your point is going to be on the x-axis. For the next part, it wants us to take each point and write the ordered pair. So when this happens, I first locate the point. So point S is right here. Starting at the origin, I would move over until I'm either under or above the point, depending on where it's located. So I'm going to move over to here and see that that's at negative 4. So my x coordinate is going to be negative 4. Notice I have my parenthesis. I did not forget my negative symbol. And I'm going to put a comma. Then what I could do is go up to the point and move over to the y-axis and see that it's at positive 11. So that would be the next coordinate. Point T is located right here. From the origin, I have to move over to positive 11. From point T, I have to go to positive 6 on the y-axis, so it's 11, 6. Point U is located right here. I'm not moving over at all to get underneath this, so that means that my x coordinate is 0. To get up to it, I had to go up 10, so it's 0, 10. Point V is located right here. Starting at the origin, I have to move over to negative 3 to be above it. So it would be negative 3. Go down to the point and across to the y-axis and see it hits at negative 2. So negative 3, negative 2. Point W is located right here. So from the origin, I would go over to 12 to be directly above the point. And then it has come down to negative 1. So 12, negative 1. Point X is the final one. I'm not moving over at all to get directly above it. So that means 0 is the x coordinate. And it's located right at negative 9 for the y.